Welcome to my summary and review of Batman, Gargoyle of Gotham, Book 2. Before I get started, let's give credit where credit is due. This book was wonderfully illustrated and written by Rafael Grampa. It was colored by Matthias Lopez and lettered by John Workman. Book 1 left us with the following cliffhangers that continue on in Book 2. 1. We discover Batman's plan to kill off Bruce Wayne. 2. While investigating a serial killer, Detective Jim Gordon has now found the links between the serial killer's victims, connecting them to the fact that they all spent time in Arkham Asylum's children's wing. And we learn that Bruce Wayne's name is on that list as well. And lastly, the mysterious and homicidal villain that is Crytoon has now been subdued by Batman. Book 2 starts off with the nameless scribe making a copy of a mysterious manuscript when all of a sudden he catches something out the corner of his eye. And this is where we're introduced to a new character by the name of Virgin. Now, I really like the way that this character looks, from the mysterious looking doll face that this character has, to the cloak, to the medallions, the prayer beads. And yes, this is a character that GCPD and Batman were looking for, and this scribe is about to get the same treatment as those victims we saw in Book 1. Sometime shortly after this, we find Virgin in a church, and as we get a closer look, we can tell that she is a girl. And her face, what I originally thought was a mask, turns out it's just either makeup or a tattoo or something like that. But she's in this church, she's sitting there holding this crucifix, and as this priest is giving mass, he's taken aback and he's stunned by seeing her. And so much so that he actually stops giving mass and he walks off the pulpit. And right after the priest freaks out, Virgin's actually going to freak out as well, because she notices somebody else that's in the congregation. And it just seems to be this normal looking middle-aged man with his wife. But due to her interest in him, obviously he's not. He has something to do with the story. So much so that we actually see Virgin following them out of the church, in the streets, and then finally up into their apartment. And it doesn't show what happens to them, but seeing what Virgin did to the scribe and the other victims in Book 1, chances are they'll probably end up the same way. Now, this is going to be the last we see of her for a little while. Now we're going to go ahead and jump over and take a look at what's going on with Jim Gordon. So we see here that Jim is finishing up his investigation at Arkham Asylum, and then he gets a call from Batman, and Batman is spilling information to him, saying that the suspect who they now have in custody, Crytoon, is linked to the illegal dynamite making factory that recently exploded. Back at GCPD, Jim is interrogating Crytoon, and he's accusing him in regards to what Batman told him over the phone, as well as the people who were killed by Virgin. And Crytoon denies murdering those people, saying that those murders lacked any imagination. Now, what goes on forward throughout the interrogation is just Crytoon making some nonsensical answers. However, he does say something, explaining to Jim the necessity of knowing what it feels like to rip someone's heart through their mouth. And I'm pointing that out because we are going to see more of that later in the issue. And before this scene ends, we see Crytoon cut the tip of his finger and then draw in blood on the desk, some sort of symbol, which is a clue that will help Batman later in the issue. So we're going to leave Jim at this point, and we're going to go check in and see what Batman's up to. And this is where we find him meditating in a pool of water, mending his wounds after a fight with Crytoon. In their last encounter we see in Book 1, it shows Batman apprehending Crytoon, but in Book 2 it shows what happens just after that. As Batman has Crytoon in his grasp, Crytoon delivers a headbutt to Batman, and this sends Batman over the edge, and he begins to beat down on Crytoon mercilessly. And you see in the captions, Batman's describing that with every blow he delivers to Crytoon, it's like a piece of him that he's chipping away, that piece of Bruce Wayne, slowly but surely dissolving. And then we see that the people who he just rescued, they are freaked out and frightened by Batman, because Batman has lost all control. Crytoon is beaten, bloodied, and battered. Batman is looking ferocious, and even the police don't even know what to do. This external fight seems to symbolize the internal battle that Batman and Bruce Wayne are having, where Batman is wanting to kill off Bruce Wayne, but it seems like there's some apprehension there. If Batman does kill off Bruce Wayne, he's not just killing him off, but he's also killing off the memory of his parents, and that's the source of his apprehension. As Bruce Wayne concludes his reflection in the tub, we see him exiting out of the water. And around this time, Jim is visiting Wayne Manor. And the reason why he's there is because of the victims of Virgin and how they're all linked to this list of patients at Arkham Asylum's children wing. And the fact that Bruce Wayne was on that list, Jim is going over there to make sure everything's okay and to check up on Bruce and see how everything is going. Now, when he gets there, he meets up with Alfred, and Alfred pretty much says he can't see him. He's going to be busy today, and not only that, but probably for the next few weeks. So Jim decides to just relay a message saying that ever since Bruce's parents were killed, he's felt guilty because he was actually in charge of that district that evening. So since then, he's always felt that need to protect Bruce Wayne. And then he goes on to share with Alfred some things that happened in his personal life that night as well. Jim Gordon's wife left him. Not only did she leave him, but she was also pregnant. As horrible as he felt that this happened to him, he's also somewhat relieved because of his lack of confidence of raising a child in Gotham. Now, while this conversation is going on, Bruce is in his Batcave and he's watching, and he's actually surprised because Bruce has no recollection of him ever being a patient at Arkham Asylum. And as Alfred escorts Jim out of Wayne Manor, Bruce appears and he wants to know what's going on. Now, Alfred is not surprised, but he does go on to explain to Bruce what happened. So right after they were killed, you see Jim Gordon and these other policemen going over the crime scene. You see Alfred consoling Bruce. And as Alfred is taking Bruce home, you see him in the backseat completely distraught. And as Alfred's talking to him, he takes a look back and sees Bruce is no longer in the car with him. So he lets GCPD know that Bruce is somewhere in the streets all alone by himself. So as Alfred and the police go scouring the streets of Gotham, they do eventually find Bruce. And he's nearly beating to death a homeless man that he finds on the street. And not only is he beating him to death, but he's beating him to death with Jim Gordon's police baton, which you probably swiped from Jim Gordon just before Alfred was taking him home. And the reason why Bruce decided to beat on this homeless man is because he was thinking that this is the person who killed his parents. But the police just chalked it up to Bruce exerting his rage on a random homeless person. But he didn't just beat him, he made him a paraplegic. And just after this episode of violence, that's when Bruce was admitted into Arkham Asylum's children's wing and was given therapeutic treatment by Dr. Quentin. Now, as Bruce recollects the events that happened the night his parents died, he remembers what happened, he remembers his parents dying, but he doesn't remember anything after that. What he does get is a vision of a demon cub with a broken wing. So Bruce now is frustrated because if this Dr. Quentin, if he was able to wipe away the memories, then maybe he was also able to implant something into Bruce. So Bruce is thinking, what if the whole Batman identity was something that was put there by Dr. Quentin? So as Bruce is figuring out what to do next and how to go about this, Alfred gives him some advice. And he says that if he wants to get to the truth of the matter, he believes that he really needs to find out who Bruce Wayne really is. And taking Alfred's advice, Bruce decides to go and visit that homeless man that he made into a paraplegic so many years ago. And this man is being taken care of at a treatment center in Gotham. As Bruce goes to visit him, as soon as the man lays eyes on him, he just becomes angry. And he starts to rant and rave at Bruce, saying, "How could you do this to me? I was just a homeless junkie. I didn't deserve for my life to turn out this way." And as Bruce is beginning to feel remorseful, that's when this man says something surprising, because he tells Bruce, "All I wanted was her pearl necklace." And alarm bells start going off in Bruce Wayne's mind, because only the killer would know something like that. If this was just some random guy that he ran into that night, there's no way he would have known that his mother even wore a pearl necklace. So this guy must have been there. This guy must have been the person who killed his parents. And as Bruce is shaking with rage, Alfred escorts him out the hospital. Now we see him driving in the car, and so many thoughts are going through Bruce's mind. Was this him really all along? Was this the person who killed his parents? Or was he so angry with Bruce that he simply just found out this bit of information and decided to throw it in his face when he got the chance? And as he's grappling with this, Alfred drives by Wayne Tower, and outside there's a huge rally going on. And this rally is being led by Nia Garcia, who started the Speak Up for Them movement that's going on in Gotham City. Now this is to bring awareness to all those who are victims of Gotham's corruption. So this movement has been going on in the backdrop of the main storylines. And we first saw Nia Garcia in book 1. She was the reporter who was bringing all this to light and then got let go from her job. Now Bruce asks Alfred to pull over, and once he does, Nia sees Bruce Wayne's car, and she grabs one of her companions and runs over to get a statement. But she's interrupted by Bruce saying that he's not going to validate her speech, and then he calls her a brat. So we see that Bruce is obviously not in a good mood after leaving the treatment center, but Nia was able to get what Bruce said on videotape. So I'm curious to see how that's going to hurt the Wayne reputation and if that in any way impacts any of the storylines. Now we find Batman and Jim at the Scriptorium. The Scriptorium was a place that the scribe was, where Virgin had killed him, and we also learned that that scribe worked for the priest, the same priest that Virgin scared off while in the church. So he does have a role in what's going on, but it's unknown now to what degree. So as Batman and Jim are investigating the scene, Batman's coming off as kind of a douche. Batman is making comments about how the police are somehow involved in this murder, that there's obviously things that have been moved, and he's criticizing Jim that he didn't see it. He's criticizing the GCPD for their sloppy police work and possible corruption. And Jim responds by saying, "Hey, I thought we're working together." And Batman says, "I don't trust anyone. I work alone." He's just coming off real hard, and Jim picks up on that real quick. Then Batman tells Jim to go check out an address, and Jim fires back saying, "Hey, I don't work for you." Now we're starting to see some bad blood develop between the two, but regardless, Jim does go investigate the address that Batman gives him. And as he approaches the apartment and knocks on the door, who answers, surprise, surprise, is the priest. So as he welcomes Jim in, Jim begins to ask him about his involvement with Arkham Asylum and why this serial killer may want to kill him. But the priest, just like Bruce Wayne, he doesn't know what he's talking about. He doesn't have any memory of it. He's never been in Arkham Asylum. And he starts to get a little flustered and tells Jim, "Hey, I need to go get some medicine. I'm having a migraine." And he walks out of the room. And as Jim is scanning the apartment, he sees a manuscript on a bookshelf. And on the manuscript is this symbol. And that same symbol was was found at the scriptorium on a medallion that Batman had found. So as Jim gets the feeling that something isn't right, he goes to investigate the priest. And as he calls out to him, a moth flies and lands on his glasses. And as he's startled by this, more moths come and surround him. But he continues to call out for the priest, and the priest responds. And once he sees him, he looks nothing like he once did. No longer a frail old priest, what stands before Gordon is a moth-like creature with giant talons, and then begins to speak, telling Gordon that he is not the priest, but he goes by the name Mothur or Mothur. I'm not really too sure how you say that. It's spelled like mother, but there's a hyphen between the TH and the ER. So I don't know if it's Mothur or Mothur. I think it would be kind of funny if it was Mother, seeing how he's a priest and goes by father, but in this transformation he's called Mother. But I don't know. Just to be on the safe side, I'm going to call him Mothur because he looks like a moth, and wherever he goes, moths tend to follow. So Mothur attacks Gordon and then grabs him up by the throat. And this is where we learn of some of Mothur's abilities besides being a grotesque moth-like creature with giant talons. Apparently he's able to see a person's aura because he goes on to describe Jim's aura, saying that it is dry. And as he's doing this, out of nowhere comes Virgin and stabs Mothur from the back all the way through the chest, which would have killed any normal person, but seeing how Mothur isn't a normal person, he shakes it off and then begins to tell Virgin that she was always his favorite, and no matter what she does, she won't stop the bells. And then he jumps out the window. While Gordon is shell-shocked by what happened, he did manage to grab his gun and point it at Virgin, but surprisingly, Virgin doesn't attack. She doesn't defend herself or anything. She puts down her weapons, gets on her knees, and puts her hand behind her head. And that's where we leave these two. But before we see what Batman's up to, we're given a peek into what's going on with Crytoon at the moment. Now that the interrogation is complete at the GCPD, Crytoon is being sent to Arkham Asylum. There are 3 police officers in the transport with him. You got one who's driving, one in the passenger seat, and one who's in the back of the van with Crytoon. Now, the conversation that happens in the van is a peculiar one. First off, the officer in the back looks at Crytoon and asks why he's so important to the Stadgeist, and reminds Crytoon of what happens if he ever gets caught. And the officer in the passenger side explains that the 3 of them are going to compete for his vacant spot. Now, we're given no clue as to what they're talking about, who the Stadgeist is, but obviously these 3 officers are corrupted. They work for somebody, probably the same person that Crytoon works for. But as officers are reveling in this information, we see Crytoon sneaking out of his handcuffs, and the officer in the passenger side hears a noise, and he turns and looks, and what stares back at him is Crytoon holding a gun to his face, while his other arm is elbow deep into the other officer's mouth, which apparently is something he needed to know the feeling of, as mentioned back in the interrogation room. This scene ends with Crytoon putting a bullet in one of the officers, and then we see the police van crash and flip over, and that's all we hear from Crytoon from this issue. Now lastly, onto Batman. We find him contemplating the internal battle going on between his true self and his alter identity when he gets a lead from Alfred. It seems that the symbol that Crytoon had drawn on the interrogation table is a clue that leads Batman to the Hotel Townsend. As he arrives nearby, he does a reconnaissance of the area, and he finds several guards at the top of the Hotel Townsend. And instead of going with the stealthy ninja approach, he decides to go with the direct berserker approach and brings the pain. Now, this isn't Batman just wanting to beat them all up for his own amusement or whatever, but as we've seen earlier in the issue, he's learned that as he goes into this berserk mode, he's breaking away at the Bruce Wayne persona and becoming more Batman, which is what Batman wants. But Bruce Wayne still has fight left in the game due to the love that he has for his parents. But while the fighting is going on, one of the henchmen is able to knock Batman through the glass in the clock tower, and they fall to the floor. As Batman gets up, he looks around, and he realizes he's disturbed some sort of cult meeting, because all around he sees people in white cloaks, but upon their faces is the same symbol that he found in the scriptorium earlier that day. But then he hears the voice of a man sitting on a throne at the far end of the room, and he says, "A demon cub falls to earth and breaks his wings. It becomes the devil and kills the man. Welcome home, child." And that is the end of the issue. So Gordon has apprehended the mysterious character Virgin, Mothur and Crytoon are now on the loose, and Batman is currently in the midst of some sort of cult. Are they friend? Are they foe? I guess we're gonna have to wait and see. Overall, I enjoyed this issue, but I have to be honest, the first issue seemed to be more impactful than this one. Although I liked it, I felt the story left me with more questions than answers. I was kind of hoping to find some more backstory about Crytoon, but instead of getting any of that, now we have Virgin, Mothur, and this cult that we know nothing about as well. And there's only 2 more issues issues left in this series. I don't know if that's the intent, to just leave a lot of unanswered questions and those being answered in another series, or if they do plan on answering all those questions within the next 2 issues, which hopefully isn't an information overload or done in a way that isn't compelling or doesn't do the first 2 issues justice. I guess in all reality, we don't really need the backstories of these characters for now. I guess what's most important is, what's the motive? What's the whole point of anything that anyone's doing? And are those things connected? Because we have a point of reference when it comes to the Arkham Asylum Children's Wing. We see Bruce there. Apparently the priest was there, aka Mothur. I'm assuming Virgin's from there as well. And they're somehow tied to this group. Is that old guy sitting on the throne? Is that Dr. Quentin? I'm pretty sure that it is, but I have a lot more questions now than I did at the beginning of this issue. But I have high hopes for the remaining 2 issues. I think that the story overall, I mean, it sucked me in. I'm very curious to see what happens. And I really don't think we're going to be disappointed. I mean, look what we have already. We have beautiful art. We have a great story, new and interesting characters, as well as another take on the character of Batman. But all in all, I highly recommend you picking up this issue. If you haven't picked up number 1, definitely go out and do that as well. And also be on the lookout for the variant covers. For book 2, we have 3 covers done by Rafael Grampa. You have the regular, the foil, and the Noir edition, as well as 2 covers done by Rafael Grassetti, one done by Gabriel Del Otto, and another by Bruno Seelig. My favorite is the Noir edition. So, tell me what's your favorite. Go ahead and mention it in the comments below. And I encourage you all to support your local comic and game shop. And as always, I appreciate you all, and thanks for watching.